Good morning, Rabbi Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Berachot. We are on Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph 57a, 11 lines from the bottom. The Gemara says, "Hanichnas la'agam b'halom." If you see yourself in a dream entering a marsh, says the Gemara, "Na'aseh Rosh Yeshiva." You become a Rosh Yeshiva. What does he have to do with the agam? Because there you have small things growing, big things growing, and also Rosh Yeshiva has to deal with the entire nation. Basically, he's giving a shiur to Amei Haaretz, to Talmidei Chachamim, to Chachamim. Everyone is there in the shiur, so therefore it's a sign for Rosh Yeshiva. We had before, if you see a goose, it's a sign for Rosh Yeshiva, and here you have a second one. Says the Gemara, if you see yourself entering a yar, if you see yourself entering a forest which has big trees, unlike just the marsh, says the Gemara, "Na'aseh Rosh Libnei Kala." Then you become second to the Rosh Yeshiva. You become Rosh Libnei Kala. Why is that? Because after the Rosh Yeshiva gave the shiur, so the regular people, the laymen, would leave. They got what they got. They didn't get what they didn't get. They would go home. Then the top Talmidim of the Rosh Yeshiva will get together to review the shiur, and there the best Talmid would go over and say the shiur again, and that would be the chazara, that would be the review of the shiur. So you're only dealing with smaller group of people, but bigger people, so to speak. So that's like yard that has the big trees. Says the Gemara, Rav Papa and Rav Huna Bred Rav Yeshua Chazu Chelma. They had a dream, both of them. These are Talmidim of Abaye, both Rav Papa and Rav Huna Bred Rav Yeshua. The students of Abaye, they saw a dream. Rav Papa saw that he was going to Agam, to marsh, and he became a Rosh Yeshiva Takel. And Rav Huna Bred Rav Yeshua saw that he went into a yard, into a forest, and he became Rosh Livnei Kala. Exactly like what we said. Ika Damri, there are those who say it was slightly different. Tarvaihu Lag Ma'ili. They both went to Agam. They both entered the marsh, but at the same time, Rav Papa, the Talit Havla Nased Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Papa had an additional thing. He had a bell hanging on his neck, and he became Rosh Yeshiva. Rav Huna the Rav Yeshua the Talit Havla. Rav Huna Rav Yeshua did not have a bell, and he became Rosh Livnei Kala. Why a bell? Because bell basically is in order to make a sound that everybody hears, a loud sound, which is also resembling a person that everyone hears from and hears about, which is a Rosh Yeshiva. So hence, Rav Papa became the Rosh Yeshiva. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi said, now of course, Rav Ashi is one of the Gedolei HaMoraim. He's the one that wrote the Gemara actually, and he was of course the Rosh Yeshiva. So he says, Ana Aylit Lagma. Prior to him becoming the Rosh Yeshiva, he says, I had a dream. I went up to the Agam, to the marsh, and I had a bell, and I rang the bell, and I became the Rosh Yeshiva. Of course, that is self-understood. Tani Tanakameh, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. One of the Amoraim was speaking in front of Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Hamakiz dam bechalom. If you see yourself letting blood in your dream, it's a sign of kaparat avonot, of atonement for your averot. Why? Because dam is red. It's like a sign of red is a sign of averot. So shani, the color red is a resemblance of averot. So you see, if you're letting blood, that is the red going out of your system. That means your avonot are going to be atoned. Vehatanya, the Gemara says, what we learned otherwise, we learned in the Braita, avonotav sdurin lo, that his averot are set up and categorized for him. It sounds like they're categorized there to be reckoned with, and says the Gemara, no. My sturin, they are organized, but they're organized to be all atoned and forgiven. Says the Gemara, Tani Tana Kamed Rav Sheshet. What if you see a snake in your dream? You would think it's a bad thing. The Gemara says it's actually an amazing thing. Parnasato mezumenet lo. Your parnasa is going to be mezumon. Because what was the klala of Nachash? What was the curse of Nachash? Afar tochal kol yemei chayecha. That your parnasa is going to be everywhere. So therefore, if you see a Nachash, that's a sign that your parnasa is going to be ready to go. Neshacho, if it bit you in the chalom, in the dream, nichbelalo, then your parnasa is doubled. Why? Because now something of the nachash is attached to you, is entered your system. So that is a super sign of parnasa, right? You'll become rich. Says the Gemara, harago, if you killed the nachash in your dream, that's not good. Because, well, your parnasa was destroyed, right? Avda parnasato, you lost your parnasa. You're going to be fired. Says the Gemara, Amar le Rav Sheshet. Rav Sheshet said, no. Kol sheken shenichbela parnasato. That is for sure a sign of good parnasa. And the Gemara says, Velohi, that's not correct. You know why Rav Sheshet said this? Because he had a dream of a nachash, and he actually killed the nachash in his dream. So he wanted to interpret his own dream in a good way. He said, hopefully is it koshker shenichbela parnasato. But Gemara says that's not an intrinsic translation of the dream. It's not what the dream actually means. Says the Gemara, he saw a dream with a nachash and he killed it, and therefore he wanted it to be interpreted properly. Tani Tana Kameh Rabbi Yochanan, one of the Amoraim, stood in front of Rabbi Yochanan and he said, Kol mine mashkin yafin chalom. If you see any drinks in your dream, is a good sign. Chutz mina yayin. Aside from if you see wine, which could be good or could be bad, depends. Yes, shoteu v'tovlo. There are those who, if you see yourself drinking wine in your dream, is good. V'yesh shoteu v'ra'lo. Sometimes it's bad. Yes, shoteu v'tovlo. Sometimes it's good. Shenemar, as it says, v'yayin yesamach levav enosh. In genuine simcha, you have a connection with wine. And sometimes a person drinks it and it's not good. As the pasuk says, there's one scenario that you use wine is when you're happy, when you have a wedding, when you have a simcha, but sometimes you use wine to forget about your problems. It says, to give to mourners wine and alcoholic beverages in order to take the edge off of their sorrow and difficulty. So therefore, it's not necessarily always good. Says the Gemara, Amar le Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said to this Tana that stood and was saying this over, Tani Talmid Chacham leolam tov. You should add to it that Talmid Chacham that sees drinking wine in the dream is always good. Shenemar, as it says, because Torah is also nimshela leyayin. It's the yayin yena shel Torah, and therefore, when a Talmid Chacham sees this in a chalom, is a sign that his Torah is going to be successful. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Now Rabbi Yochanan himself says, "Hishkim nafal pasuk letoch piv." If you wake up early in the morning and all of a sudden the pasuk comes to your mind, now, not to be mistaken with what we had before, that if you see certain dreams, you wake up in the morning and you try to think of a positive pasuk to interpret that chalom. That's what we had before. This is different. You wake up in the morning, it's all about dreams. You wake up in the morning and there you have a pasuk that comes to your mind all of a sudden. Says the Gemara, this is a miniature nevuah, right? Tanu Rabbanan. This is, again, Gemara says, a dream is 1/60th of nevuah, as we're going to have. So why 1/60th, by the way? Sleep is 1/60th of death. The dream is 1/60th of nevuah. All those things we have 1/60th. Why is that, by the way? Because if you have something mixed with 60 times more, it becomes what? So how much do you have altogether? 61. Right? You have 60 times more. Right? right? Now, the largest amount of mixture that's still not batel, the minutest amount of mixture that still is considered not batel is 1/60th, because you have 59 times more on the. So it says it is very small, but it's still something there, right? So this is a little bit of nivuah. Here's a little difference. Not talking about dream, speaking about a pasuk that comes not because you thought about it, but it just fell into your mind when you woke up and your mind is clear. That is a nivuah ketana, small miniature nivuah. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, Shlosha melachim him. Now we're going to have a series here of 3 things that you see that means something. So the first one is 3 kings, that if you see them in a dream, they mean a specific thing. Haroet David b'chalom. If you see David HaMelech in your dream, he comes and introduces himself to you, you know it's David HaMelech, then it's a sign of Yitzapeh lechasidut. Wait for Chasidut, because David HaMelech, as we had in the beginning of the Masechta, says, Shemreni ki Hasidani, right? Says, I am a Hasid. Remember, he had all the kings are doing kingly things, and it says, Ma yadai meluchlachot bedam v'shfir v'shiliyah taher isha leba'ala. That's what we had in the beginning of the Gemara. How David HaMelech went out of his way, above the call of duty in order to take care of Klal Yisrael. That's Chasidut. So therefore, if you see David HaMelech, Kesapel Chasidut. Yes, it's a good time for you to become for Chasidut. It is, it's a sign that you are destined for Chasidut. Says the Gemara, if you see Shlomo HaMelech, Kesapel Chochma. If you see Shlomo HaMelech, then, of course, Shlomo was Chacham Mikol Adam. You take a look at Melachim, Perek Hey, he was a tremendous person, and it's a Pele Chochma. Achav, if you see Achav, Yidag Min HaPur'anut. If you see Achav, he was a Rasha Merusha, and therefore, you should be worried that you're seeing him as Pur'anut, because Achav, why not anyone else? Because Achav had Pur'anut in Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. Achav is one of the people who was killed in Milchama in a tragic way, very embarrassing way. He was killed. He did not die on his bed, so to speak. So Shaul also was like that, but he also doesn't have Chelek L'Olam Haba. He was a Rasha Merusha, right? One of the kings that doesn't have Chelek L'Olam Haba. The Gemara says Mishnah in Sanhedrin Daf Tzadi is Achav. So he had both elements of Rasha. That's why he doesn't say Yarovam. Yarovam died normally. Olam Hazeh was okay at this. He both in Olam Hazeh, Olam Haba, he was Pur'anut, so therefore it's not a good sign. Says the Gemara, Gimel Nevi'im hem. There are 3 Nevi'im that you see in the dream is very meaningful. Haro'eh Sefer Melachim. If you see the book of the Nevi'im Rishonim, it's Sefer Melachim, Yetzapeh Ligdula. It's all about kings and people who ruled over Klal Yisrael. So Yisapeh Ligdula, you wait for greatness. Yecheskel, Yisapeh Lechochma. Yecheskel has the entire Masim Merkava and complexities of the chariot of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and so on. So Yisapeh Lechochma, you wait for Chochma. Yeshaya Navi, Yisapeh Lenechama. The Sefer Yeshaya is Kulo Nechama, says Gemara in Baba Batra, Daf Yudalet. So therefore, you wait for Nechama, comfort and Nechama. Yirmiyah Navi, on the other hand, is also, by the way, the Yeshaya Navi, all of the haftarot of Nechama, Nahamu Ami comes from Yeshaya, right? Anochi Umenachemchem, all of those, it comes from the Sefer Yeshaya. So therefore, it's the book of Nechama, even though that in the beginning it has some harsh words, but I mean, really, Yeshaya Navi has 2 parts, but the essence of Yeshaya Navi and his Sefer is a Navi of Nechama. Versus Yirmiyah Navi, which is the Navi of Pur'anut. The entire thing is warning about the Khurban, describing the Khurban, and he also is the author of the Lamentations of Echa. So therefore, if you see the Sefer Yirmiyah Yidag Min HaPur'anut, then it will be, you should be worried. Shlosha Ktuvim, and this was the Nevi'im. Now 3 books of Ktuvim also are very meaningful. The Ktuvim Gedolim, the larger books of Ktuvim. Haro'eh Sefer Tehillim, of course, if you see Tehillim, we just mentioned that David HaMelech is Chasidut, Tehillim also is Sapeh Chasidut, even though the Tehillim has 10 authors, contrary to what most of you may think. Tehillim was not only authored by David HaMelech, but was mainly authored by David HaMelech. When you see Sefer Tehillim, you are referenced to David HaMelech, which is Chasidut. Mishlei is Shlomo HaMelech Sefer, and therefore Yetzapeh leChochma, you wait for Chochma. And Iyov, Yid'ag min HaQur'anot. Iyov, you see from the get-go, from the first parak, he starts the difficulties, and then the rest of it is basically his friends trying to comfort him and so on. At the very last piece, you see that he actually recouped it and he came back and he had a return. But nevertheless, the entire book is really about the Qur'anut that came about, on Iyov, whoever Iyov is. The Gemara in Baba Batra actually has a three-way machloket, whether Iyov is a real person, it's a fictional person, as in time of Moshe Rabbeinu or not. But Sefer Iyov, if you see, is a sign which is not so pleasant. So therefore, Yid'ag mina Qur'anot. Shlosha Ktuvim Ktanim. These were the list of larger Svarim of Ktuvim, but you have also smaller books of Ktuvim. So 3 of them are very meaningful. If you see Shir HaShirim, you should wait Chasidut. Why is that? Because the entire Shir HaShirim is about the deep love of Klal Yisrael to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki cholat ahava ani, that I am lovesick for you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the sacrifice and so on. So therefore, that is Yetzapeh le Chasidut. Just like Rambam uses this actually in Chot Shuvah in Perek Yud, Halacha Gimel, I believe it is, in the beginning. So he says that a person should love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says you should think about him all the time, and he gives the mashal of a love between a man and woman, and then how you can't stop thinking about each other, and everything you do is for the other person. So Hashem has created this natural feeling in order for you to have a point of reference to know how to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then he brings the Shir HaShirim. The entire Shir HaShirim is written in that way because it is to tell you how you ought to feel about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, if you see Shir HaShirim, that shows that you are, prepared for that type of relationship. Yesapeh Chasidut. That's, of course, a tremendous level. Says the Gemara, Kohelet, if you see Kohelet, Yesapeh Chochma. Kohelet, again, is the Chochma of Shlomo HaMelech. And Kinot, if you see the Lamentations, then Yid'ag min HaPur'aniyot, a person should be concerned. First wide line. Haro'eh Megillat Esther, if you see Megillat Esther in the dream, Nes Na'asalo, it's a sign that you're going to encounter miracles, good things. Shlosha Chachamim him. Now, 3 big Chachamim that if you see them in a dream, is very meaningful. Rabbi, if you see Haro'eh Rabbi B'Chalom Yitzapeh LaChochma. Rabbi was a tremendous Chacham, and therefore, he's the author of Mishnayot. Therefore, if you see Rabbi, Yitzapeh LaChochma, right? Rabbi also was a very big Ashir. So now that becomes a bigger problem when we read the next one. The next one is Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Yitzapeh LaAshirut. If you see Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, you should wait for Ashirut because he was a very big Ashir. Now, you all remember that we had in the Gemara earlier on in Daf Kaf Chet that one of the criteria that they needed for a Nasi was that he should be Ashir to be able to deal with the government, with the system. When they wanted to give an early retirement to Rabbi Gamliel and have a replacement for him, they said, oh, well, we can't do Rabbi Yeshua because he's the Baal Maseh. We can't do Rabbi Akiva because he doesn't have Zchut Avot. Who are we going to do? We're going to do Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah because he's the 10th generation after Ezra Sofer, and he's a Hacham, and he's an Ashir, right?
What's an Ashir?
Rich person, he was extremely wealthy. Now, so wait for Ashirut, says the Gemara. But wait a second. Rabbi was a tremendous Ashir. Rabbi was a tremendous Ashir, as we're going to have. And the Gemara says the only person that was equivalent of Antoninus, the Caesar, the emperor of Rome, was Rabbi. So why don't you say that? Because the Gemara says in Ketuvot, Daf Kuf Dalet, it's the whole story of Rabbi and his final days and his death is mentioned in Ketuvot on page 404. The Gemara there says that he swore at the end of his life, he raised his hands and he took an oath that he had all of his fancy things and his table was set with all the goodies, but he never benefited from Olam Hazeh, afilu ke'etzba ktana, even with his pinky. He was a chassid, he was a tremendous person. He did not indulge in the pleasures of the world, even though that because of the kavod of Nesiut, he was a billionaire and he gave tzedakah. He said, Shulchan was always said, but he didn't benefit from it. Therefore, that we don't take as a sign of Ashirut necessarily. We really take it as a sign of his chokhmah. Says the Gemara. So if you see Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that would be a tzapel Ashirut. Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha. If you see Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha, then yid'ag mina Pur'aniyut. That then you should be worried for Pur'anut, because he was one of the Asara Harugei Malchut. He was skinned alive, as we learn in the Agata of Asara Harugei Malchut. He was a beautiful, the most gorgeous individual in his generation. And when they wanted to kill him, the daughter of the Ketzar said, I want him alive. He said, I can't not kill him. He said, okay, at least skin him alive and preserve the skin for me, and so on and so forth. That's what they did to him. But, well, you will say, as we're going to see very soon in the coming Dapim, Rabbi Akiva also was one of the 10 Asara Harugei Malchut. They combed his flesh with iron combs as he was alive, and that's, perhaps even more difficult. So why only Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha? Perhaps one could say, the Gemara in Gittin says, Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha, he was a Bal Yisurim even from earlier on. When he was much younger, he was taken captive by the Romans, he was imprisoned, and then we learned the Midrashim of Asara Harugei Malchut that his son and daughter were taken captive, and he had the whole story with them. So he was associated with Yisurim, with difficulty in life, much more so than other people, perhaps. Therefore, if you see him in a dream, that would be a difficult sign, not necessarily a good one. Says the Gemara, Shlosha Talmidei Chachamim. Now, this was 3 Chachamim. Now we have 3 Talmidei Chachamim. What's the difference? Talmid Chacham, not Talmid Chacham. The Chachamim are ones that they had smicha. Talmidei Chachamim are those who never got smicha. Right? So therefore, 3 from that category that never got smicha, even though that they were tremendous Chachamim, as we were going to see just in a moment. If you see Ben Azai in your dream, you should wait for Hasidut. The Gemara says in Chayikah, Gemara says that he himself saw in his dream that he was a Hasid. Ben Azai was considered a Hasid. Why exactly is debatable, but Ben Azai is a tremendous Talmid Chacham. The Gemara in Bechorot Daf Nun Chet says that Ben Azai himself said, "Kol Chachmei Yisrael." He says all the Chachmei Yisrael in comparison to me. If you want to compare and put on scale, they are like a klipat hashum. They're like a shell, a peel, outer peel of a garlic. Aside from Rabbi Akiva, everyone else was nothing in comparison to him. He was a tremendous, but he never got smicha. Hence, he's considered the Talmid Chacham, not called a Chacham. Says the Gemara. That's if you see Ben Azai. The first one of the Talmidei Chachamim, Yisabel Chasidut. Ben Zuma, if you see Ben Zuma, Yisabel Chochma. Ben Zuma was a tremendous Chacham. And if you see Acher, if you see Elisha ben Avuya, which is called Elisha Acher, Yid'ad mina Pur'anut, then you should be concerned because he didn't have a good ending, necessarily went off the path and so on. Kol minei hayot, if you see all kinds of animals, wild animals in the dream, Yafot lachalom is good. Chutz min apil v'akof v'akapud. Aside from an elephant, a monkey, and kapud is another one of the mishpaha of kof, another subcategory of the monkey family, the chimpanzee with a longer tail, and so on. So says the Gemara, those 3 are not good. But we learned that if you see a peel, an elephant, amazing things are going to happen to you. Says Gemara lo kasha. We had this already before. That's not the stira. The misrag, one if it's saddle, it's not saddle. Saddle is good. Not saddle is bad. Says Gemara, kol minei matachot yafim lachalom. If you see different metal items in your dream is all good. Chutz mimar pesel v'kardom. Aside from these three tools, v'hanimili the chazinhu v'kataihu, and that is when you see them in their handle, in the wooden handle that they have, and then it's not good. Otherwise, just the metal part is fine. Says the Gemara, kol minei perot yafin halom, all kinds of fruits are good for a dream. Chutz mipaget mara, aside from the unripened dates that are not good. Kol minei yarakot yafin halom, all types of vegetables are good for in a dream if you see them. Chutz mirashe lefatot, aside from turnips, the heads of turnips that we spoke about it before in a health thing when you actually are eating them. So it's not only bad there, it's also in dreams, it's not a good sign. Rav, didn't Rav say, Lo atri ad chazai rashe lefatot? I didn't become rich until I saw rashe lefatot in my dream. Says the Gemara, ki chaza bekanaihu chaza. When he saw it, it was different. Kol mines vu'in yafin halom. All colors, if you see in your dream, it is good. Aside from, now this is not something that you would expect it. Just like when he saw, see, different things could mean different. We just had Rav says, I saw turnips, but then the Gemara says no, they were actually attached to the ground, and that was a good sign. If you have a detached from the ground, is bad. But here the Gemara says the colors are good. If I would ask around over here, what color should be good for chalom, you would say, wow, well, it says uritem oto by tchelet, right? That's a good sign. Gemara says no, actually every color is good aside from tchelet, right? Now, it's very interesting actually here. Just one second. It's very interesting because the Rashi over here says tchelet is actually yarok. So we think that tchelet is blue. One of tchelet is a very ambiguous sugya, as we gave shiurim on this before at Lent and Shabbat afternoons. But one of the difficult sources to deal with in the sugya of tchelet is the Rashi that says that tchelet is some sort of a yarok shade, not really completely deep blue. So he says, aside from tchelet, yes.
Sorry if I missed this last week. Where are they getting? They had a committee and they sat down and
well, and many of them is because of the signs that they are already in the. We try to explain some of them based on psukim that the Gemara brings, and some of them, as you saw today, they are sources for them. A long chassis go through different things. For instance, why Rabbi Yisraeli and not Rabbi Akiva? We try to explain why Shira Shirim. We try to explain, and there are other deeper sources as well that you see. The Gemara felt that these were the signs that if you see this, they're trying to give you a sign of the essential core of this item and what it means. Now, there are other things that could be more malleable, as we mentioned before, that goes after the interpretation and so on and so forth, which we already discussed, when it's essential and when it could be, changed based on the pitaron, based on the interpretation of the chalom. Says the Gemara, Kol mine ofot yafin chalom. If you see any of these, any birds in dream is good, aside from karya v'kafufa v'korfraim. Those three birds refer to your art scrolls for the modern day translation. Says the Gemara. Now we're going to have this what you see over here. Haguf, man. This is a sign for what we're going to be learning. There are three things that you eat, but the guf does not really benefit from them. Says the Gemara, they are good gidaniot vekafniot paget mara. Now we just had the paget mara, unripened dates are not good, and this is again connection to that. The Gemara brings this. There are certain things that you eat and it's not good for you necessarily. Now, once you add that, there are three things that don't enter your body, but the guf does benefit from them, and they are rechitza, bathing, washing your body. Sicha means rubbing oil and ointments on your body, v'tashmish hamita, right? Shlosha me'en olam haba. There are three things that are me'en olam haba. It's a taste of olam haba. Eluhen, Shabbat, Shemesh, v'tashmish. Is Shabbat, is Shemesh, sun, and Tashmish. The Gemara says, what type of Tashmish are you speaking about? Tashmish demai. Ilma Tashmish hamita. If you're referring to intimacy, Tashmish hamita. Says the Gemara, ha mechash kachish. That weakens the person. It's not, can't be men olam haba. Ela Tashmish nekavim is referring to a person being able to relieve themselves. Says the Gemara, there are three things that give a person yishuv hadat, they calm a person's mind. These are the three things. Kol umar evereach, when you have a beautiful voice, a beautiful sight, and a nice smell, those three things, they are miyashev the dat, they give you yishuv hadat, calm your soul. Says the Gemara and mine. And there are three things that make you happy and they expand your spirit, says the Gemara, and these are dirana'a ve'ishana'a ve'kelim na'im, a beautiful residence, a beautiful house, a beautiful wife, and a kelim na'im, beautiful furniture and stuff, vessels. Says the Gemara. Now these were all 3. Now we're going to have 5. Chamisha echad mishishim. The 5 things that are 1/60th of something. So we started in the beginning of the Amud. We spoke about the dream being 1/60th of Nevuah. This is the Gemara where it speaks about it. It says the Gemara, Eluhen, Esh, Dvash, v'Shabbat, v'Shena, v'Chalom. Fire, honey, Shabbat, sleep, and dream. Those are the 5. Now, what are they? Esh, fire, is echad mishishim legeinam, is 1/60th of Geinam. Dvash, honey, is 1/60th of man. Shabbat is 1/60th of Olam Haba. As we said, Shabbat is Me'en Olam Haba. And Shena, again, because you have, again, the spiritual experience of Shabbat, of having in the Shama Yetera, a person that, indeed experiences Shabbat in a holy way, that is a Echad Mishishim Mashu, something of a feeling of Olam Haba. And says the Shena is Echad Mishishim Lemita. Sleeping is 1/60th of death, because again, not the whole Neshama is present. And Chalom is Echad Mishishim Lenevuah. And dream is 1/60th of Nevuah. Says Gemara, Shishat Varim Sivan Yafeh Lecholet. 6 things are good for a sick person. Ve'eluhen. These are the 6. Itush ze'ah shilshul keri v'shena. Sneezing, sweating, shilshul, which means being able to get rid of things in your body. Going to the bathroom, shilshul is diarrhea. Keri and shena, sleep. And chalom, dream. So it says the Gemara, itush tichtiv, because how do I know that these are good? The Gemara brings a source for each one of them. Itush tichtiv, atishotav tahel or. Rufa brings light to him, and says the Gemara, ze'ad tichtiv b'ze'at apecha tochal lechem. You think that's a bad pasuk, but really it says b'ze'at apecha tochal lechem. When you sweat, that is a sign that you're going to be able to go back to your health and tochal lechem. Shilshul tichtiv maher tzo'a lipateach v'lo yamut. So he sees a sign of refuah and being able to go back to his health. Says the Gemara, keri dichtiv yir'eh zera yarich yamim. So that also for a sick person, of course, we're not talking about the regular person. For a sick person, that is a sign that his body is going back to norm. Shena dichtiv yashanti az yanuach li. So you see that also gives menucha, gives health to a person. Chalom dichtiv v'tachlimeni v'techayeni. That the chalom is a sign of chayim. It's a good thing. Shisha dvarim. Well, we are out of time. Bezrat Hashem will continue this in the days to come.
Welcome to the jam, Rabbi.
Hmm?
Should we announce?
Well, we